Okay, so welcome everybody to our fourth webinars series. So this is the fourth webinar which we are doing. We have, as most of you might be knowing, we have a monthly webinar which is happening on the fourth Thursday of every month. So we are planning to move it to the third Thursday of every month going forward, and we are working out the logistics for that. But this is a monthly webinar from DBP. So, and today's presentation is going to be on data products. So how do we build a scalable and a reliable approach towards data monetization? So we will see how we can do it here. So as most of you might be knowing, my name is Prashanth. I'm basically a consultant and an educator. I bring over 20 years of experience from companies such as SAP, Shell, Apple, GE, and P&G. I've written two books, Data for Business Performance and Analytics Best Practices. So if you need a discount code on those two books, you can message me offline. My number is there. My email is also there. I'm active in LinkedIn too. You can connect me in LinkedIn, and but you can message me. I'm an expert council member at Forbes Technology Council. So tomorrow, stay tuned for my article on dark data, which is going to come in Forbes. And apart from consulting and training, I sit as an advisor at SAS Institute, which is mainly for Western Canada, Evaluserve, which is a Swiss-based company, and Growsoft, which is based in India. And I teach as an adjunct professor. I teach data analytics at University of Calgary. So I still see people are joining. I see, sorry, data analytics adjunct professor at University of Calgary and at IE Business School. So that's it about me, and so I still see people are joining. Okay, good. So today we have a guest speaker as well, who is going to join me in this discussion. We have Mihalis, who is on the call here, and he is a data engineer at Agronow, which is based in Athens in Greece, and they have an amazing data product which they call it as a data platform on food safety intelligence, and they call it as Food Archive. So Mihalis is in the call, and after I'm done with my talk, Mihalis will come to the stage, and we both will have a kind of a quick Q&A. And after that, we will leave the stage to you guys, but you can ask me as well as Mihalis on what they have done, on what data products is all about, and specifically if you want to know more about Food Archive from Mihalis as well. So this is the first time we are having a speaker from Greece, coincidentally, which is welcome Mihalis to DBP's webinar.
Nice being here, and thank you for having me, Prashanth.
Okay, perfect. Okay, good. So before we get into the data product, so what exactly is a product? So most of you would have heard about this word pretty often. So in a very simple terms, it can be a tangible or an intangible entity that is created through a process that provides benefits to the market. So at a very general term, unlike any other thing which is a service, for example, or a project which is tailored to a specific customer, a product is not designed for a customer per se. It is designed for the whole market or for the whole industry. For instance, it could be based on geography, it could be based on line of business, and so on and so forth. For example, a chair is a product. You go to IKEA and you buy a chair. Okay, it's a product. Microsoft Office, they didn't build it for you, they build it for the whole market. So if you say, I want this feature in Microsoft, no, you don't get it. So whatever Microsoft has built, you just take it. Engineering services, like there are many engineering services, and you can take those services as well. They all could be called as products. Whereas the product is more scalable, more resilient. It is designed for the market based on a set of repeatable processes, set of repeatable patterns, which the team sees. A project is basically a specific endeavor, which is temporary. Just to solve a particular problem, we are doing this project, whereas product is more holistic, more long-term, more scalable, more reliable, so on and so forth. So having said this about the definition of a project, so what's the context? Why are we talking about data products? As most of you would have known, in the last 2 years itself, 90% of the data has been 90% of the data that has been generated in the world happened in the last 2 years. from the dawn of civilization to today, just in 2 years, we have created enormous amount of data, both structured and unstructured. And most of you would have heard about the 3 V's of big data, which is volume, velocity, and variety. So when we are looking at petabytes of data, not even gigabytes. If you look at the amount of variety of data, structured, unstructured, it could be text, voice, images, so on and so forth. Velocity, it could be streaming data, which is coming from the machines, IoT world, social media, so on and so forth, or even discrete data. So bottom line is it could be both time series and discrete data as well. So according to McKinsey Global Institute, they say data in today is a $300 billion industry today. Coincidentally, if you look at the kind of companies which are in the limelight these days, or at least the ones which are having high market capital, they are the ones which are mostly the tech and the data companies. Like if you look at the most valuable company today, which is Apple or Amazon or Microsoft or Google or Facebook, the top 5 companies, they are all tech and the data centric companies. But it doesn't mean that companies such as Shell or Walmart are not making money. But surprisingly, the market believes that the tech and the data company are highly valued than the Fords, the Shells, and the Walmart. They are also multi-billion-dollar companies, and they're also making tons of money. So if you look at on one end of the spectrum, you have the highly profitable companies which have a track record of decades or even centuries behind them, Ford, Shell, and Walmart. On the other hand, if you look at the new generation companies like the Ubers, the Twitters, and the Facebooks of the world, they are valued highly in the market because of their because they are more about data and technology. So this is where the industry is also going. So having said this, so what is a data product? A data product is basically an application of data in improving the business performance. It is typically an output of an analytics activity. So what is analytics? Let's demystify the term analytics. So everybody has many definitions of analytics. Like day before yesterday, I was talking to a board of director from one of India's big utility company called Power Grid Corporation. So it's basically all the power that is generated, whether it's solar, hydro, coal, everything is fed into the grid, and the grid is basically distributing it to all the states. And when I was talking to him about analytics, he says that we are already doing analytics. So I said, can you give me some areas about where you are doing analytics? He says we have invested a lot in Power BI reports. So which is true. That's one small part of analytics. One of the reasons why we have this kind of complication in the definition of analytics is mainly because the tech vendors have defined analytics based on the products and services they sell. If you talk to SAP, for instance, where I worked before a few years back, their definition of analytics is mostly from ERP to GRC to the CRM and everything. They sell almost like 250 odd products. So they have a huge products to sell, and their definition of analytics is to touch every product they are selling. Whereas if you look at SaaS, one of the companies I'm advising these days, their definition of analytics, because they come from a statistical background, their definition of analytics is more about data processing, machine learning, predictive analytics, regression, and so on and so forth. Whereas if you look at Tableau and Spotfire, their definition of analytics is more towards dashboarding. So, but one thing is for sure, everybody defines analytics as some amount of data processing that is occurring. So in this background, my definition of analytics is basically using data to answer your business questions, to get insights, to help in decision making. So when I say that, okay, to get insights, I'm looking at 4 phases in the analytics process. Many companies or many institutes, they talk about analytics as synonymous to data science, whereas my definition of analytics involves 4 key building blocks, which is data capture, data integration or data engineering, you can call it. Number 3, data science, which most of you might be knowing. And the last one, which is about data visualization or monetization. So analytics is not just about data science. In fact, 80 to 85% of the effort that goes into analytics projects is mainly on data engineering. How to get disparate data which are in different shapes and form into the data warehouse so that my data scientist can go to the data warehouse, pull those data, and start deriving insights. So that's the definition of analytics. So when we look at data product in the context of analytics, it encompasses all the 4 stages, right from data capture to data integration by making it a syndicated data. We will see what it is now, to a data science activity, which is an output of all the statistical models, and ultimately data monetization or visualization. In fact, today, data product is a core element of data monetization. If you're looking at monetization, where you are trying to get revenues or create a new revenue streams from data, one of the ways to do it is to leverage data products, not just on reports or not just on bringing the data to the warehouse. How you can create a solid data product, which is the output of your data analytics activity, which we'll see now how to do this. In fact, IDC, which is one of the industry analyst companies in the world, they said that by 2025, half of the world's GDP will come from data related or digitally enhanced products, services, and experience. So imagine like 50% of the world's revenue or GDP is going to be related to data and the digital products, which is quite surprising, given that in the next 5 years things are going to dramatically change in the world of data and analytics, which most of you would have realized by now with the COVID, the way things are getting digitized and the way digital transformation is happening these days world over. Okay, now having said this, let's go back and further look at the type of analytics which we are doing, given that we say the data product is one of the activities from data, is an output of a data analytics activity. So broadly, we can classify analytics as three major buckets: descriptive analytics, predictive, and prescriptive. So in fact, while talking or while teaching, it makes sense to classify analytics into three major buckets. But actually, in my view, this is actually an analytics continuum. It is like a conversation. It is continuous, which I will explain what it is. Let's say, for example, we have two people in the room. Let's take Ryan and Ajit, who have joined this webinar. So Ryan reports to Ajit, and Ajit comes to Ryan and says, "Hey, Ryan, how much money did we make in 2018?" So Ryan says, "Okay, let me pull this data from my ERP system or CRM system and get you those insights." So Ryan says, "We made in 2018, we made $20 million." So Ajit says, "Good. So how does it? What money are we going to do it in 2028? 2025, sorry." So Ryan says, "Hey, this is predictive analytics. This is about the future. What's going to happen in the future? So I need to do some regression work. So I'll come back to you on that." So Ryan works in his desktop. He does some regression models in Python or R or SAS/Y or any of the tools. And he goes to Ajit and says, "Hey, Ajit, in 2025, we are going to make 30 million. So Ajit says, "Okay, that's good. But my target is 40 million. So tell me, what are the factors which will make me get this 40 million?" So Ryan says, "I need to do optimization for this. I need to find those factors which will make you get this 40 million, which will make a particular event happen." So it's prescriptive analytics, optimization. So I'm going to run these models, which could be simplex, linear, whatever it is, and I'm going to give you those insights. So Ryan comes back to Ajit and says, "These are the three things which you need to do to get this 40 million. So if you look at the conversation which is happening between Ryan and Ajit, for instance, it is actually, they are not doing, "Oh, descriptive analytics, we are done, and let me go back to my desk and I'm finished with my work." It's not happening like that. It's like a conversation that's happening between business stakeholders. So analytics, while teaching or while training, it makes sense to categorize into three buckets. But in the real world, it is not those three buckets. It is like a continuum. Descriptive analytics, which is about the past, what exactly happened; predictive analytics, which is about the future, what will happen; and prescriptive analytics, which is about optimization, which is to find out the particular factors which are making it happen. And again, descriptive can be broken down into three areas. One is exploratory, which is about, you can say, about the characteristics of the data. Associative is about relationship, and inferential analytics is all about taking the sample data and extrapolating it to the population. Predictive analytics, which is all about prediction, about the future. It's about data-driven, it's about analyst-driven or data-driven. Again, data-driven can be broken down into two buckets: supervised and unsupervised models. Prescriptive analytics is about optimization, but many times the optimization techniques will not give you a definite answer. So you might have to rely on the heuristic models as well to get some reasonably good enough answers. So analytics in many companies I have seen, it's like, "Oh, we are the basic reporting group," or "We are the advanced analytics group." So it's all created, it's like kind of a glamour that is created unnecessarily in my view. But yeah, actually, it's all about conversation and getting insights. So it is what business wants. It is nothing about glamour or advanced or basic. Any insights that's going to help in business performance is good. So whether you call it as descriptive or reporting, or whether you call it as regression or machine learning, it's all about insight generation. And ultimately, the insight that is generated is presented in reports and dashboard and put it on your mobile phone or portal, wherever it is. So a quick overview about what analytics is. So data products, coming back to this, why are we talking about data products? Because they help to scale the data analytics capabilities, unlike a project endeavor and other organization constraints. In fact, Gartner did a study as part of the CDO 4.0, which is the latest version for the chief data officer. He says that they say that 80% of the analytics projects again, keyword is projects here, are not giving results for the companies. And one of the reasons companies can improve that success rate of the 20% success rate is by transforming their project management capabilities of delivering analytic solutions into product management. So Gartner also talks about data products. It's not just about money and value. It's also about the best practices as well. So we saw what data products is all about. So basically, there are three types of data products. The first one is what I call it as data enhancing platform. So what are these? Commonly, these are known as curated or the syndicated data. So what they do is they collect data from a variety of sources. As these data sets grow, they become very valuable. The more data which you have, the more valuable these data products are. A classic example is Zoom info. Like for example, let's assume that you are selling supplies for the dentist, for example, and you are in Toronto, and you want to know, say within Toronto in a particular area, say downtown, for example, who are the dentists who are there, and I want to sell my dental supplies to them. One of the reasons is, of course, Google, which is also a data product. But if you go to the Zoom info, for instance, you might get much more details because it's all curated, it's processed right from, could be their revenues, could be the services they offer, so on and so forth. So these data products, what they typically start as a very small set of data, but over a period of time, they mature and mature, and it becomes very sophisticated data product. The same one, if you can take it like from other companies, like for example, IHS, which is one of the leading data products in the company, at least from the commodity side. So so syndicated data is also very commonly used by marketers in the retail and the CPG sector who want to get into a specific audience. That's the first part of data products. The second is it's basically a data which is take this and do whatever you want with this, whether you want to run it on Power BI or whether you want to do it on Python, it's left here. Number two is about the data exchanging product. So what is exchanging here? So it's basically you give some of your data in exchange for something else the platform gives. A classic example is Google. The more data you give to Google, the more value Google gives. This is one joke which I got from the internet. Google, we are hiring, so no need to apply because we have all your information. So that's how Google works. Same with LinkedIn. The more data you give to LinkedIn, make your profile complete, and so on and so forth. So more value you get out of Google. Same with Facebook. Like for example, if you put all your data correctly, where you are located, your address and everything, and say, for example, you want to know all the services that have been sold, like for example, let's take lawn mowing services. So the company which is into lawn mowing, for instance, they can specifically tailor messages for you, assuming that you have shared your data with Facebook. If you have not shared the data, you will miss that thing. Of course, it's all you are getting free, but in the process, somebody else is paying for it. So it's advertisers who are actually paying for it. The last one is the data experiencing platform, which is typically the third phase of analytics, which I said earlier: data capture, data integration, data science, and data visualization or monetization. So the third phase, which is the data science product, which could be an external data product, like something what you get from Bloomberg, for example, for all the commodity prices, or it could be the internal data platform where you can create your own, say, Power BI report, which is what the director from Power Grid Corporation India was talking about. So we are getting Power BI reports. Is it what analytics is? Of course, it is analytics, but it is a very, very small piece of what analytics is all about, which could be on sales margin, which could be on cost of goods sold, whatever it is. All those internal data products which you have built as part of your company, and these are typically historical reports. Very, very few cases where we are talking about prediction or predictive analytics. So two examples I just want to share on some of the on these two types of projects where I worked. The first example, as I worked for a project with Alberta Energy Regulator, which is one of the big energy regulators in Alberta. So what they do is they collect oil production data from different oil producers, like from Shell, Husky Energy, Suncor Energy, and so on and so forth. And they take it and they give it to a company called IHS, which we discussed a few minutes back. And IHS takes the data, massages it, polishes it, blends it with other external data, makes it more holistic rather than just a few attributes they get from AER, and gives and sells it back to all these oil companies about the data. So on this, a small story here. So when I was doing this project, I went to AER and I say, I asked those people in the meeting room, do you sell your data to anybody? Do you monetize your data? They said, no, we don't do it. But after a few seconds, one guy in the corner of the room, he says, actually, we don't sell, but we give it to somebody. Then I said, whom do you give it to? They said, we give it to IHS for free. Okay, then I said, fine. Then after a few days, I went to the federal energy regulator called National Energy Board. They are also headquartered in Calgary. And I said, do you sell your data to anybody? They said, no. Then the next, I asked, do you buy data from anybody? So they said, yes. From whom? I asked. I said, IHS. Okay, good. So it's basically two companies which are just 2 blocks away in the same town. But one company is taking the data, polishing it, curating it, and actually selling it to a different sister concern in the same building. So which is happening very often in many places. So this is one example of the data enhancing platform. The second one is data exchanging platform. There's one more project where I worked for a fuel retailing company, which is in Ontario. For people in Ontario, it is known as Pioneer Gas Station. For people in Alberta, it is known as Fast Gas, and for people in Montreal, if they're there, it's known as Ultramar. So it's basically a company there. And what they do is, while working in this project, I ran into this company called SPS, which is based in Minneapolis. So what they do is they work with a bunch of retailers, collect all their point of sale data, curate it, polish it, and give it to the CPG companies. So what's the value here? So the CPG companies, let's take Pepsi, for example, they are selling their products through Walmart, through Costco, through convenience stores, and in many places. So Pepsi can't go to all these retail chains and say, hey, tell me about how much products have been sold about on this quantity and so on. So what SPS does is, hey, Pepsi, you don't do that work. We will do it for you. But we'll not just do it for you. We'll do for all other CPG companies, whether it's Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Kellogg, Nestle, whoever it is. We'll bring all the data into our platform, and then we will get it done. So what SPS does is they go to Walmart, Costco, all the superstore and all those places, get their data, which is basically your data, your shopping patterns, and they curate it, they process it, and sell it back to the CPG companies. So how is the money made? So the money is made between the retail companies and SPS. They both share 50% of the money, and which is your data, in fact. And then that money, which is actually money, is paid by the CPG companies. The CPG companies, they save a lot of time and money, because they don't have to go to all the retailers in the world to get the information about the products and services sold. So this is like SPS has got over 95,000 retail customers in their database. So other thing is they are becoming a kind of a very powerful data aggregator. So that means if you are not in SPS, like for example, tomorrow, if you are a retail chain, for instance, and you want to start getting products from Pepsi and Coke, for example, Pepsi and Coke will say you have to sell your data give your data to SPS, or else we will not ship those products. So they are becoming a powerful entity as well, when they have 95,000 odd customers in their database. So this is how the data product, this is an example of a data exchanging product. The two projects which I worked on, just to share what's happening, which is real data. And this year, I worked for a leading oil company as well in building a data product for them to monetize their crude oil movement data to other transportation companies, so that they don't just keep the crude oil movement data as field tickets in their system. They also can look at monetizing the data. I'm also talking to a refinery in Los Angeles area to look at how they can monetize their refinery data. So it's all changing dramatically in the last few years, because earlier, 10 years back, in my experience, data was mainly used for reporting, but today companies are looking at other options too and creating the data products, which could be their new line of business. So how do you build this? The first thing is you need to have a strategy. Next thing is about the execution. So what's a strategy? So first thing is, if you look at the data strategy which you have, in Harvard Business Review, there's a classic article on data strategy where they're saying it's two ends of the spectrum. One is offense, other is defense. So it was written by Tom Davenport. If you are interested, I would suggest you to Google it and read that article as well. So when you talk about defense, are you more towards operations and compliance oriented? Whereas offense industries such as retail and CPG are more on the offense side. Whereas if you look at healthcare and oil and gas, they are more on the defense side. So you want to see what your data strategy is all about. Because historically, if you look at companies, whether it's retail or oil and gas or healthcare, the data collection process typically started as a compliance endeavor. So that's one thing. You want to see where in the industry, which industry you are positioned, so that you can understand your data strategy well. Number two is about compliance. Broadly, from the compliance perspective, data can be classified into three types. Number one is open data, which is anybody can see. It is very fungible, very transferable. Number two is confidential data. Like, for example, I want to know the profit margin for this product. Of course, you will get it only if you are the right person in the company to get that information. Not that everybody will get that every piece of information. So it is confidential. And the third thing is about restricted, which is typically related to regulations and data privacy. So from the compliance, you on the one end of the spectrum, you have open, which you can completely transfer it. And the other hand, you have completely restricted data, which you can't really monetize it. Then the consumers. If you look on one end of the spectrum, you have your internal employees. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have your external customers. So in between, you have your partners, who could be your vendors, your agents, your people with whom we get commissions, and so on and so forth. So you need to identify, as part of the insight consumers, who is going to consume this data product. And lastly, on the purpose, you can look at insights which are highly contextual. And on the other hand, you can look at the curated data or the syndicated data, which is highly commoditized. So these are the four elements where you have to factor in when you are looking at the strategic aspects of building a data product. Okay, so now how do I build it? So the first thing is you have to look at your whole value chain. So what is a value chain? The way your process, products and services reach your end customer. So how do you design the product? How do you build it? How do you source the external products? How do you assemble it? How do you market it? How do you distribute it? How do you shelf it in the stores? And look at the whole value chain and look at the players in that value chain who need that information. Say, for example, in between the value chain, the whole elements is not just employees and the customers. In between, you have the stores, which I have outsourced it, or some of it is my own store, some of it is my partner store. There are vendors who are supplying components to this. They also need information about the products and services. For example, let's assume that you are an oil company or you are in the utilities company, for instance. The oil and process related companies are heavy on the procurement spend. Almost like 60% of their cost of goods sold, it's getting into is on procurement. So you might want to say, if you take Husky Energy, for instance, which is almost like a $20 billion company, and assume that 12 billion comes from procurement spend. So that means that your vendors who are actually to whom you are giving 12 billion of your revenue. So you want to, there would be a big opportunity for you if you share that information. Even a 1% savings there would make you millions of dollars there. So look at the whole value chain when it comes to your business model. Identifying the key objectives or KPIs in the value chain block. Let's take procure to pay, the same example what I've said before. You have procurement, so you are issue requisition, then you have purchasing. After that purchasing, you have the you are issuing the purchase order. You are looking at receivables. You are looking at invoicing. Let's assume these 5 blocks. Look at the key objectives and KPIs in each of the value chain, each of the value chain blocks. Then you tie that number 2 and number 1 steps together, and by looking at the appropriate data objects and the stakeholder groups. And then you find the raw data that is needed to accomplish that objective. And now here the tricky part starts. Now when you say I need data, for example, now the first thing is, do I have the data for that? So many times in what happens in the 2 common thing which I've seen in most of the consulting projects which I do, number 1, the data is not there. Or number 2, even if the data is there, it's not of good quality. So that happens. That's where you run into this problem. Is the data available internally? If there is good data available, good. Then maybe integrate and package it based on those 4 criteria which you have set into a data project. Now, if the data is not available internally, so what do? Get data. How do I get data? There are many techniques which I've been talking about in many forums. One is using sampling. Number 2 is feature engineering, or also you can get data from external sources, for example, like Bloomberg, for instance, AER, what the 2 examples which I've told, Kaggle, which is a great place to get data, Google, Microsoft. There are tons and tons of places. Open data, for example, if you are looking at a demographic data, for instance, Statistics Canada in Canada has a lot of data. So you can get data externally as well. So open data, in many governments have made their data public for the citizens to access. So there are many sources of getting data externally as well. And once you get the data, you want to check whether the sensitivity, whether it's privacy, security, and so on and so forth are concerned. If there is sensitivity issue, you can sanitize the data. There are many techniques to sanitize the data so that you can sell it as part of a data product. So this is like a high level process flow on how to build a data product. There are a lot of or you can say a little bit of like a happy path scenario, but there are many ways or many obstacles you will encounter while facing each one of those. So one of the things which you need for the data product is also about strong leadership as well in the company, about what's the vision, where we are going, and so on and so forth. And when you talk about leadership, the leaders are always concerned about the financial benefits. So if you talk about the financial benefits, they are more excited to talk to you more. If you things like the fluffy aspects, saying that data is an asset or data improves business performance, all those things will not sell very far. It's good for the first conversation, but when you want to have a real serious conversation, it's the money that really talks. So there, I've just taken one simple example of a project which I did. So in this case, we are looking at a three-year revenue model. So in the first year, there is actually a loss because we are spending a lot of time in developing the data product, which comes to $208,000 loss. But in the second year and third year, we are making money from the data products by actually selling it. So if you come back to time T0, we do a net present value, assuming that the cost of capital is about 5%, and take this minus loss of 208,000, 354,000, and 558,000 into time T0 and do the net present value, it comes to 854. Okay. Now this is one way of looking at it, but what they are interested, the senior management is when design the data product, is about the ROI. So if you look at the ROI, for example, for the same number, then net present value on the investment is about 678,000. Then profit is about, or revenue is about 544,000. So you do the NPV and you get an ROIC about 27%. So imagine the company's ROI from other projects is about say 12% or something. You go to the management and say, hey, there is a data product and this is the financial projections. And if you invest in this, you are going to make the 28% returns. Definitely, he is interested to talk more. right? Tell me more about it, because he can make money out of this data product, which is a new line of business. So this brings to the end of this presentation. So what I will do is I will do a quick Q&A with Mihalis about their data products. You will also get to know what they have done and how they have built this data product. And after this is done, Mihalis and me will take the Q&A on the questions which you have specific to Agrono or Food.ai, which is their product, or in general about how to build data products. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Mihalis, welcome to the DPP webinars. So it looks like we have a good crowd. We have about 17 people in the call, so good attendance. We started a bit slow, but overall it was a good session. By the way, we have a few more slides to share as well. So let's do the Q&A, and then we will do this. So the first question from me, Mihalis. Of course, the people also will ask questions, but from me, do you want to tell the people more about AgroNow and the journey of AgroNow till today? What do you guys do? How you started everything?
Perfect. First of all, Prashanth, I thank you very much for having us here. Now, let's talk about Agronow. Now, Agronow started as a data consulting company. So, while I was watching your presentation, many things came into mind. We've been a company for roughly 12 years now. We started as a data consulting one, and the need we identified initially at the start of Agronow was that, okay, everyone knows that there is data out there, but wants to make some sense of it and knows what they want to do with it. So what we initially focused on was that, okay, we have a customer, we have an end user that has access to data, but then perhaps wants to create a data management platform or a search engine. So we started working on this, and during this process, we worked with many organizations throughout the world. And for instance, let me mention the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, or the Wageningen University here in Europe, or MSU, Michigan State University, in the States. And the problem they came to us with was, for instance, okay, we have access to 10 millions of agricultural papers talking on agriculture. Can you make sense of them? Can you access them? Can you index them? And can we then perform queries on top of them? Can we know which papers are talking about tomatoes over the past 5 years, for instance? And this is what we initially focused on. But of course, this stopped once our data product, Southekal, as you mentioned, Prashanth, came to life. So, which is our main focus from there on.
Okay, thanks, Mihalis. So do you want to tell us more about your data product, Food.ai?
Sure. So I'm guessing the name gives some context into our product. So let's first of all talk about the name. The name comes from two different parts. Food, of course, our data product has to do with food, and akai, which in Japanese means red. So our product has to do with food and danger, the color red. So what we do is that we collect food recalls that are announced worldwide. So every food safety authority out there is performing checks on food available on supermarkets or that are attempting to be imported at customs level. And what we do is that we collect all this open data along, of course, with other data. For instance, we have border rejections or inspections on food safety authorities. We collect all of this data. We, of course, translate them because they are available in the official sources language. We attempt to enrich them in an automatic way in order to identify the product that was involved in the recall, the food company that had to do with the recall, or the date of the recall, and so on. And of course, the reason behind the recall. And then we index this data. Once we index this data, we have a data curation step that says, okay, the machine identified this specific ingredient that was involved in the product, in the recall. Is this correct? Yes, no. And so we have a data curation step. And once this happens, all of this data is published into our application. Southekal, which is then we perform analytics on top, and one can actually identify emerging risk, for instance, or which is the prevalent reason behind recalls for, let's say, chicken. And this is what we do within Southekal.
Okay, great summary, Mihalis. So, what's the value proposition for the customer? So, who are your typical customers, and what value Food Ekai and Agronow provides to them?
Now, our customers are, of course, food companies, and we're mostly focused on large food companies. They can be retailers, as you mentioned within your presentation. They can be manufacturers, or in general, everyone in the food supply chain that has to keep track of millions of data. Let's take the example of a retailer, for instance, that gets their products from various food companies out there and then sells them through their supermarket and their supply chain. So, um, what they have to do is that they have to keep track of all of the dangers, all of the possible hazards that can occur throughout the supply chain. For instance, there may be poor control, or there may be missing an allergy statement in the labels of the products, and this is what they have to keep track with. And this is what we offer within Foodakai. We collect all of this data, we analyze them, and we give our customers an easy way to access this data and say that, okay, I have a supplier, for instance, for chicken. Okay, what do I have to check this chicken for? This chicken was imported, for instance, from China, where there is an emerging hazard, for instance, for salmonella. Okay, I can focus my laboratory testing on this, and I don't have to test for everything, for every possible danger out there, but I can check specifically for cases that may affect me on the one side, and of course on the other side, as you can understand, there are many data, much data out there available. But in order for a food company to collect and make sense of them, harmonize them, is a time-consuming effort. So the second thing that we're offering our end users is actually they can save time using our product. We've already done all the work, we've collected, we've analyzed, we've created this data. Okay, here it is. You can just click on it and make sense of this data.
Excellent, excellent. So, while building the Food Ekai, so so what are the typical challenges you faced or you are facing even today?
Okay, excellent question. Because on the one side, of course, we have the technical challenges. As I mentioned before, we're collecting data worldwide. So as you can understand, this data may come in many formats and many languages. For instance, one country announces the food recalls in English, for instance, the United States on their website. So we have plain HTML, for instance. But within Greece, we have PDFs written in Greek and so on. For instance, in Chinese, we have the Chinese language and so on. So, on the technological side of things, the main barrier was that we have various data, various languages, and we have to make sense of them. So, of course, we had to implement various and use various technologies and frameworks in order to make sense of this data, harmonize the data, and make it available to our end users. This is one side, and on the other side, of course, we have we had to give this value over to our end users so they can fully understand what we're offering. And then possibly, there's an example of this that once our end users or large companies more specifically are viewing our product, they initially see the need that, okay, you have access to all of this data, you've harmonized it, it's super, but I have also data, internal data. Can you integrate it into our system? Into your system? Can we mix them together with the open data that you have collected? So, and of course, as you can understand, this is also a challenge because this data comes in various formats and everyone has a different XLS file out there in different columns and so on.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. So, now I leave it to the audience. If anybody in the webinar has any questions, they can unmute, or else I will unmute all. So, if you want to ask anything to me or Mihalis, will be glad to take your questions.
So, hi Prashanth, this is Ajit. Can you hear me?
Please, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I have a general question. Either Prashant, either one of you could answer, or maybe both of you can take a perspective from each side. But I mean, I'm going back to the beginning, right? We already talking about data and how it impacts our customers and how it impacts in different areas within each businesses. But I think the starting point is understanding what is your data and how clean is that data, right? Like how is your data actually telling you the real story? Because your data could you could have some data which tells you information which you believe is right, or you could have that data tell you that information is correct because you've taken the necessary steps to keep that data clean. So what would you advise, people who are, I mean, individuals like me or companies where we work in terms of like my data is clean. What are the steps that I would take, like a checklist or something like that, common things any data analyst would say, or in the space, in the experience that you have, like
Oh,
how do you make
absolutely.
sure that data is
Absolutely.
clean?
Yeah. Great question, Ajit. I'll take first and then probably Mihalis can add his perspectives as well. So one of the things which I said about the three types of analytics and within descriptive is, which I call it as exploratory data analytics, and which is to understand the describing the data. So as you said, without understanding the data, there is not much you can do going forward, whether it's predictive or optimization, whatever it is. So when you talk about the characteristics of the data as part of DBP, what we have done is we have identified 22 key KPIs, which will help you to know the quality of the data. And these 22 KPIs look at the data set holistically. Like, for example, let's take purchasing data or asset performance data or payroll data, whatever data, or even food safety data, and classify each of the attributes in that data set. Let's assume, to make it a little bit simple, let's assume that you give me a file with 5,000 rows and 10 attributes, for example, and you say, hey, Prashant, can you tell me if the data quality is good or not? So I take that file and run it through our parser, which throws you an output of with 22 KPIs. So that's bottom line is coming back to the earlier statement. The first thing which you need to do for data quality is assessment. If you don't assess, then you don't know where you start. So that's one thing. And assessment is basically, you must have heard about this 1-10-100 rule, right? So it takes $1 to proactively fix the data and $100 to reactively fix the data, right? So it's 1-10-100 rule. So either you want to spend $1, again, prevention is better than cure, and assess your data quality, or else you want to spend $100 and see the repercussions and the impact it has done to the business. So the first step in all those thing is assessment, and data quality assessment, as you rightly said, is the first step in the journey of becoming a data driven company. And the work which we have done is we can we can share it offline. We can talk offline about those 22 KPIs as well.
Sure.
That's what I would suggest. So
Okay.
Mihalis, anything else you want to add on top of it?
First of all, let me say that, Prashanth, I perfectly agree with you. Just a quick tip from my side, and based on the experience from my food guys, that what we first did, because okay, we had various of data sources, and all of them had some kind of different attributes or features within the data science department. But what we first did is that we attempted to create an internal schema for us that says, okay, these properties are super important. We do not have to miss them. We need them in our own analysis, and then we built on top of this. So my suggestion based on the experience of Food would be something like this: that Ajit, you can create your own internal schema. You know what you want to do with the data, and then you try to fill in the blanks. So, for instance, you have an internal schema, you have all the properties. You just try to match whatever data you have coming in raw format, you match them into the internal schema, and anything that does not match in the internal schema, just keep them somewhere, and you may later have to make sense of them. But identify the important features within your analysis. That would be our suggestion.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions?
I've got a question, Prashanth. It's Ryan speaking.
Hi, Ryan.
Hi. It's for Mihalis. Was keen to know just and maybe you talked about it already, but you talked about the integration being a big challenge for what you guys do in your company. I was curious to know if right now you feel that your product is where you guys would like it to be ideally, or if there are some integration challenges that are holding it back from being what it could be or what it is in your mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's a perfect question right now. First of all, based on my background, I'm a data engineer, so of course, I come from the computer science background, so it will never be ideal. We are always having things to do, and we always want to improve things. In terms of integration, and I will mainly focus my answer on internal data coming from food companies. The main challenge that we're having is the different formats out there. So, for instance, an end user may have many XLS files with with various columns that are joined differently, whereas another one may have different sheets or different language or different columns. So I would say, and what we're currently working on in terms of integration is actually harmonizing this data and giving our end user an easy to use way in order to integrate this data into our system. Does this answer your question, Ryan?
Yes, absolutely. That's what I was wondering. So it is a harmonization of the data and then, getting it into a usable format, because that is the problem that everybody seems to face, right?
Exactly.
Talking different languages, we all got to wind up on something we understand. So thank you for that.
Shashini, do you have a question?
Yeah, so thanks, Prashanth. I think this is a great session. I think you're doing a great job in basically furthering the data literacy amongst the data enthusiasts, if I may say so. So my question is a bit different. Of late, I have been reading about the complexity of programs and leading to a cultural change. But to me, the cultural factors have to be baked in before the project started, right, to ensure the success of the project. So my question is, in all your data projects or in the build of a data product, what cultural factors maybe have the leadership take into effect to be baked in to make this data product or a data project successful? I'm not sure if it's a long question or so, but.
I'll take this thing. So one thing is for sure, most of the analytics projects are failing, are 80% from Gartner and McKinsey also said something like 70%, whatever it is one of the reasons is about the data literacy. Of course, the cultural aspect as well. Like that's where the DBP, our company, believes that consulting and training, education have to go hand in hand. Like for example, if you are not informed about anything, you forget about analytics in general. If you don't know anything, if you don't know much about a particular topic, the resistance to change is higher. So when you are informed about that particular thing, then the incentive to embark on the change journey is much higher. So one of the things in most of the analytics project is data literacy. Gartner also said the same thing. They put it as number 2 in their list. Why analytics project fail? It's because of data literacy. So the companies have to talk about the communication aspects. That's number 1. Number 2 is while organizing the companies based on line of business gives some efficiencies, it also creates some silos in the company. So there is a trade-off between efficiencies versus silos. And that silos also create some kind of barriers when it comes to building data products. Like you want a holistic data product. Like for example, in a simple case, in one oil company, barrels to meter cube conversion, we couldn't agree on the number of decimal places, whether it should go with 2 decimal places or 6 decimal places, right? It might look like a very silly conversation when I come and tell you, but when you talk inside the companies, the passions run high, the emotions run high. And if you take the 6 decimal places and multiply it by $1 million, million, for example, of quantities produced, million barrels of quantities produced, it turns out to be a huge number when it comes to the bottom line. So, so it's all about communication, about working with people and all those things. And leadership, absolutely, as what you said, is critical. So if the leadership is not there, it's going to, senior leadership is not there, and it's a huge challenge. And probably that's also one more reason. McKinsey did a survey, and they found that just 17% in the board, on an average, have the kind of data literacy levels to take the company forward. So but it's all changing thick and fast, but it's still not happening. But things are changing fast. Yeah. Okay, good. So we are just 2 minutes away. So we have 2 more slides. The first slide is about, shall we do a group picture? If you are not okay with this, so you don't have to turn on the camera, so that when the picture is taken, your picture doesn't come. But if you are okay, just turn on the camera, so that we are going to take the 5 key takeaways which I have in the next slide, and put it in LinkedIn. And okay, I'll just, so everybody looks good. You are all looking good and smart, so don't worry about your appearance. So Ajit and Mayank, is it the COVID beard or and haircut? Okay, good. Thank
I'm
you.
preparing for the winters, Prashant.
Huh?
I said I'm preparing for the winters. I call it natural insulation.
Oh, okay, good, good. Yeah. Okay, good.
Thank
So
you.
I'm going to take the screenshot now. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so just 1 second. Great. So I'll come back to Zoom now, because we just have one last slide to show, just a kind of are you able to see this? Ryan, Pavna?
Yeah, able to see.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So team picture is done. So what's the 5 key takeaways? This is what I understood based on what Mihal has said and what I presented and what you guys asked. So the future of data is not just to leverage data for reporting and compliance, but also monetize it and create new revenue streams, new lines of business with data product. This is where the future is going. As IDC was saying, 50% of the world's GDP will be based on data-related products and services in the next 5 years. If you don't monetize your data, one thing is, of course, you are losing money, but also there is a huge risk. There is a high probability that your data becomes a dark data. So if you are wondering what is this new term Prashanth is talking about as dark data, so I'm talking about it. So stay tuned for my article tomorrow, which is, so I see 2 more people have joined now, but probably they messed up the timing, I feel. So if you're wondering what dark data is all about, it's basically unused data. Forrester, which is also a kind of company to IDC, they say that 73% of a data in a company is never used for anything. People are just collecting it and keeping it. Carnegie Mellon did a similar study, and they went up to 90%. They said 90% of the data in a company is never used. So if you don't monetize your data, there is a high probability that you are getting into dark data. And when you get into the dark data world, there is cost of data management. There is a risk of data management. There is a security aspect, so on and so forth. So you are and these days collecting data is very easy. So there are so many tools, right? From IoT devices, your sensors, your smartphones, and so on and so forth. So if you don't monetize your data, there is dark data. Stay tuned for my article tomorrow in Forbes on dark data. The strategy of building a data product is basically 4 things, which encompasses regulations, data security and privacy, and the states and the needs of the stakeholders across the entire value chain. Don't look at your particular business group or business entity. Look at the whole value chain on how your products and services reach the end customer who is actually paying for your products and services. And finally, as Srini was talking about, organization silos inhibit transforming data into a business asset, and that means that there are no data products which are there. So these are the 5 key takeaways. So there's one last thing. Thank you very much we have this monthly webinar. Follow DBP Institute in LinkedIn. You will get to know who is talking, what's happening, everything. In fact, with AgroNow and DBP, we are doing a small project together to further enhance the Food Akai product. So that's why I thought this is a great way to for AgroNow and DBP to come and share our strategy also together. So that's one thing. And the next DBP webinar is going to be on October 29th from Mark Stern. He's the director of BI and analytics at Ladbrokes Coral, which is based in UK or Gibraltar, whatever you want to call it. And he's going to talk about how to build a strong data analytics stream. So it's going to be an exciting topic. We have been talking a lot. It's a mix. Anything related to data and digital and analytics, we talk here. So very accomplished leaders are going to come. If you have a great topic as well, feel to reach out to me or Pavna. And we have speakers lined till February. December, we are not doing this session, but we have speakers lined till February after that. We have October, November, January, and February speaker. But we are looking for more speakers. And if you're interested to talk here, it would be great to have you. So I'm going to post this in LinkedIn in the next few days. If you can comment about how your experience was, that will help us get more people and make our community bigger and stronger. Thank you very much, and see you soon. Take care and stay safe.